bottom part, and that's how I know some of these stories that I'm telling you. And not only because of that, but also in the bottom of the house was born Saadia Maltiano, one of the first leaders of the Israeli Black Panthers, with whose sister I used to do some of these tours. She tried to re-establish the Black Panthers a few years ago, to run for the Jerusalem municipality. And she tells about how they used to, their house used to be so crowded. There were 12 brothers and sisters, very small house. I actually had the chance to see it a couple of times. It was like about a room and a half, 2 rooms. And it was so crowded that they had to sleep in shifts, the kids. The older kids would roam the streets at night, the younger kids would sleep, and then they would switch. In the morning when the young kids woke up and went to their activities, the older kids would go and sleep the rest of the day. So those were the kind of conditions people were living in. But I promised to tell you the story of the Black Panthers, and so I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to give you a warning beforehand, and just say that when I was researching this story, I talked to a lot of people, and every person had a bit of a different twist to it. Often it involved having been set up in his house with his idea, which of course was always true. So what I did was I took all these different stories, added a little bit of my own, and that's the story I'm going to tell you now. Of course, once I tell you this story, it's the only true story. If anybody tells you otherwise, please ignore and run away. Those of you who come for the Black Panthers tour might hear that again, so please don't do it. Anyways, the story goes like this. Early in 1971, 1971, there was a reporter from one of the daily journals of the time, Alam Shma, and he was coming to Musala to do a piece about the poverty and how people were living, Middle Eastern Jews. So he came to Musala. We see sometimes these things in the newspaper, what people are eating, what they aren't eating, kind of little flies around, stuff like that. And so he came and he did this story. And to do this story, he walked around, he talked to some people, had sort of a feel of the neighborhood. And at some point during his walking around, he came across a group sitting here on the railings with their social worker and a group of youth. And he started talking to them, and they were telling him about some of their difficulties and some things that made them angry and all of that. And at some point in the interview, he said, "Okay, are you going to do anything about what you told me?" And one of the kids yelled out, "We're going to be like the Black Panthers in America, and we're going to fight against the establishment, and we're going to do all of these things." He said, "Oh, very interesting," and he wrote down. And they continued chit-chatting. Eventually, he went home, and they went home. And what happened was the very next day, there was this headline inside the newspaper which said, "Israeli Black Panthers Party created in Musala neighborhood." So the kids opened the newspaper, they saw it. Probably somebody had to read it to them because some of them couldn't read. And they were like, "Oh, wow, that's very interesting. Exciting. Why didn't anybody tell us?" It's what we call creative driving. See, but when you're religious, you can afford to do that because you have the protection of God. That's regular people coming.